Speed Racer is the industry allegory, and it's hidden in plain sight. Because Speed Racer isn't really about racing. I think we get that if you've seen it or actually watched it. It's about Hollywood, about what happens when corporations try to control art. And it's really a warning. Speed Racer is pretty much saying, hey, if you don't stay true to your art like I am, then you're going to end up with 2026 energy where everything is sold out. It's about what happens when a creator refuses to sell out at the end of the day. Because throughout Speed Racer, characters constantly repeat one core idea. And sorry, my allergies are shitty, but I gotta grind. But they repeat one core idea. Racing isn't about money. Racing is about the dream. But the villains, they see racing as a business, a system, or even a product. And once you notice that contrast, suddenly the entire movie stops being about cars. Or I should say instantly it stops being about cars. And it starts looking like a metaphor for the entertainment industry itself. So I'm gonna break this theory down. I always do. You know I'm gonna get to it. And honestly, by the end of this video, you might even realize that the Wachowski, however you say it, the Wachowskis, they weren't making a racing movie, the directors. They were making a statement about Hollywood. And if you don't know, the Wachowskis, they made Matrix Reloaded in 03 or something like that. Now, if you haven't seen Speed Racer, you need to watch it because it's literally cinematic excellence. It's actually beautiful, but it's the movie that everyone misunderstood. And I think because of the fact that it is exposing the Hollywood industry. Now, when Speed Racer was released in 2008, great time. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. The visuals were very overwhelming. The editing felt surreal and the tone blended cartoon logic with emotional drama. So the critics just dismissed it, especially for the times. This movie underperformed, but over time, something interesting happened. I think the fans began revisiting the film and realizing something great. It's the fact that Speed Racer wasn't trying to be realistic. It was trying to be pure creative expression, right? And that's something Hollywood genuinely hates. So the film looks like a living cartoon where colors explode across the screen, the physics of racing bend around emotion. And that's important because the movie constantly contrasts two philosophies. One side believes racing is art. The other believes racing is a product to control. And if that doesn't sound familiar, it should, because that's the exact battle that happens every day in the film industry. And if you haven't seen my Hunger Games theory video, watch that because this kind of correlates with that. It's the fact that hope and thinking on your own is seen as a risk for a major industry. Anyone that needs to control the balance of an outcome as far as something being broadcasted is probably rigged in some way or fixed, or it needs to be fixed. Now, early in the movie, Speed Racer's brother Rex explains something fundamental about racing. Racing is life. Anything that happens before or after is just waiting. To Rex and later Speed, racing is passion. It's about expression, its identity, and just love for the craft. But then we meet the villain of the story, corporate tycoon Royalton. And Royalton delivers one of the most revealing speeches in the entire movie. He tells Speed something shocking. He says, races are fixed, not sometimes, not occasionally, all the time. And that's where it correlates with the Hunger Games theory. And if Speed wants to win, he must join the system. Suddenly, racing isn't a sport, it's a corporate machine. And that moment feels eerily similar to something else, Hollywood, right? So at this point, it's obvious and very easy to understand how Royalton is corporate Hollywood. Royalton isn't just a villain, he's a symbol. A representation of the corporate mindset that dominates creative industries. Now, Royalton sees racers the same way studios see creators. It's as assets or as brands, as things to monetize. He tells Speed, your skill is an asset. I want to monetize it. Simple. That line alone could be spoken by a studio executive. Royalton doesn't care about the beauty of racing. He cares about control of the market. And in Hollywood, the same thing happens. Studios often prioritize franchises, predictable formulas, marketable IP, and it's generally that instead of original creative vision, which leads us to the central conflict of the movie. Speed Racer represents the artist. And how is this a conflict? Speed Racer isn't just a protagonist. Now he's the artist archetype, a creator who refuses to compromise their passion. Speed refuses Royalton's deal, even though it can make him insanely rich, even though it guarantees immense success. Why? Because accepting the deal would mean giving up the purity of racing. He says something absolutely beautiful. Racing is not a business. That's a direct rejection of commodification. Speed believes racing should remain authentic expression, and that belief is exactly what puts him in conflict with the system. Just like artists who refuse to conform to corporate expectations, like refusing to sing a certain song or act in a certain movie because you want to be close to what made you love the art in the first place. So essentially, the corporate machine, the corporate industry machine, all that is pretty much just a washing machine that likes to wash dirty clothes with no Tide Pods, and authentic artists are the ones who like to bring the Tide Pods. But when the machine sees a Tide Pod, it sees it as a wrench in the machine versus something that could potentially clean up other acts. And that takes me to my next point. It's the fact that the racing industry mirrors Hollywood. This movie reveals that racing is secretly controlled by corporations. In other words, they manipulate race outcomes like the Super Bowl or Tom Brady in general. And team ownership, they get manipulated like any team LeBron's on. They manipulate sponsorships like Mercedes and Jurassic Park to the point where you trying to buy a G-Wagon versus, oh, are the dinosaurs going to kill them? They manipulate public narratives like any artist label in the music industry. Everything is engineered to protect profits. In other words, the races are scripted. Sound familiar? Yeah. Because in Hollywood, many films are shaped by studio interference. Scripts get rewritten for sponsors and to save people's feelings. Directors lose creative control, which reshapes the vision and the output. And art becomes content, which means it's just something you're looking at, not even something you're watching or retaining at this point. And the movie is asking a question. What happens when the system becomes so powerful that authentic creativity becomes rebellion? And that walks us into the Wachowskis' personal message, the directors, because this is where the theory gets stupid deep. The directors of Speed Racer, Lana Wachowski and Lily Wachowski, they had already experienced massive Hollywood pressure after their earlier movie, The Matrix. That movie revolutionized cinema, but it also turned the Wachowskis into corporate assets. Studios expected them to repeat the formula, to produce more blockbuster hits, more franchises, and more predictable success, but instead, they made Speed Racer, one of the most stylistically experimental blockbusters ever made. And this is a movie that refused to follow the industry playbook, which makes the allegory even stronger, because Speed Racer might actually be the Wachowskis telling their own story. Artists refusing to let corporations define their creativity, because again, it's too perfect. Everything is too on the nose as far as this allegory. And who else would be a better storyteller of the corruption within the Hollywood industry than the people, the directors that made The Matrix, one of the best movies ever. And you could even argue that The Matrix has some type of theory to it too. It's some type of exposure as well. They really could just be known for exposing the industry, and the industry just caught wind, but a little too late. So here's my theory in full, because you know it's my favorite part. In Speed Racer, racing equals artistic creation. Royalty equals corporate Hollywood. The racing league equals the studio system. And fixed races is pretty much formulaic blockbuster filmmaking. And Speed himself represents the uncompromising artist, someone who believes creativity should exist for passion, not for profit. The climax of the movie proves this idea. Speed wins the final race, not because of corporate backing, but because of pure love for racing. In that moment, the film declares something powerful. True creativity can't be controlled, it can't be manufactured, and it definitely can't be owned by corporations. And that's why I love this movie, because there's so much exposure within this movie, because his older brother Rex, he conforms, right? He conforms to the industry. So he has to go through this whole plot, they plot him out. He dies, supposedly, they change his face, but he's still driving the car, acting like he's not who he is, but he is who he is. And that's a lot of exposure for Hollywood to deal with. Like the fact that they're pretty much telling people, hey, they can make you think this person is still this person, but it's not this person. Hey, they can make you think that this person died when in reality, that's just a part of his playbook. Hey, this person can easily not be this person. There's so much exposure to it. And since a kid, I've always loved this movie. This movie is literally perfect. I'm not going to lie to you. Everything is twisted, and I've always seen things another way. Nothing can be trusted. Whatever you're seeing is not what you're seeing. And that's what this movie pretty much embodies, and I love that. Because same with this channel. It embodies whatever you're seeing is not what you think you're seeing. Now, back to it. Royalton is corporate Hollywood. He isn't just a villain. He's a symbol at the end of the day. And now let's talk about why the movie failed at first. Because ironically, the movie itself became a victim of the exact system it critiques. Studios marketed it poorly. It was marketed well, so it was well marketed, but in the wrong direction. Because you got to keep in mind, there's bright colors, it's cars, it's kind of a childish, cartoony look. So it was marketed to kids predominantly. So with the type of message it has, only an adult that has years of experience with living in the world with shitty Hollywood being around would understand the undertone and the subtext. So with them catering it to children, marketing it to children, it's very easy for something like this to seem as if it flopped. Because when kids are watching it, it seems kind of like, oh, I'm just here. When adults are watching it, it's like, oh, okay, I see this was for the kids and this, that, and the third. So I'll just kind of blindly watch this, just look at it. I'm just taking my kids to see it type deal. You got to keep in mind as well, this movie is one giant allegory and they market it towards kids who haven't even learned about literary devices yet. So there's no similes, metaphors, symbolism, allegories. They don't know none of that yet. So of course this message will fly over their heads and adults are just going to think it's childish. So I wouldn't say that this movie failed exactly, but I would say that it fell victim to the exact system that, again, it's critiquing. In other words, I would say that they were set up for sure. And this is how. Audience expected something conventional because I remember playing the Flash game on the computer, but that was pretty much it. They had a couple Hot Wheels, I think, but that's it. So that gave the audience and people that were expecting to watch it the illusion of, oh, this is going to be a conventional movie. But Speed Racer wasn't trying to be conventional. It was trying to be art, which is why years later, many fans now see it as a misunderstood masterpiece because this is a movie that wasn't ahead of its time. It was simply too honest about the industry it came from. Just like the movie Him. That movie was actually kind of terrible, but it was still too honest. Him was bad, but shout out Jordan Peele. And that's my theory. And next time you watch Speed Racer, think of OC. Look past the cars, look past the colors, because underneath the racing spectacle, you might be watching a story about artists fighting to protect creativity from corporate control. And honestly, that might make Speed Racer one of the most rebellious blockbusters ever made. Now, if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like. If you rock with this, put in the comments. Don't rock with it, put in the comments. Put your own movie theories and all that. I want to see that. And subscribe for more of these hidden meanings, because you know I'm going to get to them. Now, W Fan Club, I see y'all. Shout out to y'all. And we on the road to 100, baby. So subscribe. Stay smooth.
It has nothing to do with cars or drivers. All that matters is power and the unassailable might of money.